Hello. Wait a second.
Hi.
What's going on? Why do I hear background music? Wait a
I don't
second. I
hear
got it.
anything.
There it is. There it is. I'm sorry. I like to monitor things in other chats, in other channels, make sure but we are live. You see there how that works? And
I
look who I
see.
have with me, the great Megan Fox. Is it Megan or Megan?
Megan.
Megan. Okay.
Hmm.
If I screw it up 50,000 times, will you be upset?
No.
Okay. You see, that's sweet. Because you're a good mom. I invited some of my Catholic friends on, but of course I know that Megan is very dependable, and and I wanted to have a discussion about kind of Catholicism because I was on with Joe of Good Lawgic the other day, and he had his dad on, and his dad is a rabbi
Mm-hmm.
and knows his stuff, and Joe knows his Jewish stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now Joe's dad actually knows Christian stuff because his specialty at I think it's at Turo is Christian Islamic relations in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, isn't that something?
That's a great topic. I love that.
I know, isn't it something? I think that's so fascinating.
Whoa, what are you drinking here? What is this party?
Oh, well, I'm experimenting with cinnamon simple syrup lately.
Okay.
It's something I want. I've been making like all these fall cocktails, just kind of see with the liquor I have in the house to see what I like the most. This one is the best one yet. This is a cinnamon apple whiskey sour. And
Wow.
I used snake bite. There's something called snake bite apple flavored whiskey, and then Black Button Reserve that's finished in apple brandy barrels. So I used a shot of 2 shots of each, and then or not. I mean, not 2 shots of each, 1 shot of each. So 2 shots total, with a shot of the cinnamon simple syrup that I made by boiling sugar, water, and cinnamon sticks, and a little vanilla, uh, and a lemon and an egg white, and you shake it and pour it over ice and serve it with New York apples as a garnish and some cinnamon on top and a cinnamon stick and
Mm,
a lemon twist. It's delicious.
that sounds really good.
It is
You
really
gotta
good. It's
post
my
the
new favorite thing.
recipes. So you have and if anybody
I
doesn't
did. I posted it on my locals, meganfox.locals.com. You can
yes,
watch
see there?
you can watch me make it there. There's a video and the recipe is posted there as well.
Very good. See there, and you're getting better at these things, so you aren't burning water anymore. All right.
That's really a rare occasion. I know that it seems like it happens a lot, but it was the first time that ever happened to me. I
Oh
made it
yes, I'm sure.
47 years before that happened.
Well, so we have drinks. Although I don't have a drink, it's a weekday, and but I did want to have a little stream, and it doesn't have to be that long. Just wanted to have a little dialogue. I was thinking about it, and one of the things that Joe was saying is he doesn't know too much about Christianity, and when I mentioned to him Stations of the Cross, he's like, "What's that?"
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. We were actually, you know what, Steve? It's so funny. I'm covering that Maya Kowalski trial.
Hmm.
And that's the one about the medical kidnapping from St. John's in Florida. You sat in a little bit of it the other day. They're Catholic. The family is Catholic. And this has become a very big part of this trial because it
Really?
turns out the Johns Hopkins Hospital refused to allow this child after they medically kidnapped her from her family. Her priest wasn't allowed to visit. Her members of her church were not allowed to visit. She was not allowed to have a rosary, a prayer book, a statue of Mary. So today on the stand was this witness who was from her church, and she was wearing a hat, and we were all kind of like poking fun of her and her hat. But she turned out to be the sweetest praying lady. This is just someone that you would want
Right.
on your side, like a very devout Catholic woman. She was holding a rosary on the stand, and she started telling the story about how they had the traveling statue of Mary that they would take to people in need, people who needed prayer, and they would take this statue. And it started out sounding, and the chat was like, what is this cultish stuff, but because some Catholics are more devout than others, and some Catholics, if they're Polish Catholics,
Right.
they have different culture uh,
Yes.
than we do here. And like Mexican Catholics, Brazilian Catholics, everybody has their own way of doing Catholicism, which actually I think makes it really beautiful. I think it
Yes, I
puts
agree.
I love the
we're gonna
diversity.
talk. This is you are
And
the
it
right.
came up. It
Hmm?
came up that
It
the
came up.
Stations of the Cross came up. It's funny you're
How did it come up? In what way?
because the chat was like starting with their anti-Catholic stuff as usual with the oh, so they're praying to a statue. And I
Right.
was trying to explain, no. What the reason why the Catholic Church has so many iconic images and carvings and statues and everything is because hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, a lot of people didn't read. So the church had to have the priests had to have a way to incorporate those stories and have people remember those stories and be able to follow along with the stories and understand what they were hearing. So when you look at the Stations of the Cross, the Stations of the Cross, is their carvings all the way around your church. You know, in a cathedral, there's several of them. I don't know, what is it, 12 Stations of the Cross?
Yeah, that's right. See, that's it.
It's 12, yeah.
Right.
And they in each one depicts a certain moment in the crucifixion of Christ. And so each one tells a story. And that's what it's for. It's not for kneeling down in front of and worshiping the statue, as in, because that would be idolatry. That would be heretical. That's
Mhm.
not what Christians believe. But it's useful as a meditation tool and also for people back when they didn't read, when almost everyone was illiterate, to be able to see this and appreciate the beauty of the story and without having to read the words in the book. And that's something that is really lost. And also the Catholic Church and their willingness and passion for bringing art into the church and hiring these incredible artists like Michelangelo to paint the cathedrals, to paint the ceiling, and to create these incredible statues and works of art that we have for centuries. This is a beautiful thing, and it bothers
Right.
me when I hear people say, "Oh, you
Well, we're
these
gonna talk.
idols."
I already had a debunking screen. Let's talk about all of these things, but let's say hello to who's here right already. It's because I love everybody. I love the replay crew. So let's give a shout out first to the replay crew because a lot of people catch my stuff on replay. And but I did get I guess that's a super chat from Let's Go Brandon. Let's Go
That's
Brandon's here.
funny.
Good to see you. I love that name. Steve, can I forward you another boring probate filing? Yes, yes. Okay, he's talking private business offline. Yes, you can just email me anything. You've got an end with Gosney. But thank you very much. And different estate, unfortunately. Okay, I'm Irish Catholic, so I could actually add value here. You're welcome to come on, tell me, and I'll send you a link. I need my Catholic friends to have we're going to have a group discussion. Let's see who else. We've got Bella the Bayou, of course, first one on Rumble. Dredged Strife. That's so different. I don't know. I haven't seen you before, but good to see you. She says too much work for a drink. And Wrestler Town. And then over here on YouTube's got Shane. Thank you, Shane, for being here. And David Nelson. Mom. Sweet Tooth Fairy. Ginger with the Soul says mom and dad, right? KT, hi. And let's see. Cinnamon syrup is lovely alliteration.
It
Yeah.
is.
Cinnamon
Cinnamon
simple
simple
syrup.
syrup.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is a great alliteration.
Sweet Tooth Fairy asks, what does the egg do for it?
It makes it frothy. Do you see there's like a white foam
Yes, I see that.
on the top? So when you shake up an egg white, and it works better with my farm fresh eggs, but today I had to use the store-bought ones, unfortunately, because my chickens are slowing down for the season. But it makes it very creamy and frothy, and it puts like this layer of foam at the top that's just lovely. And when you sprinkle like you're topping like a cinnamon on top, it kind of
Oh,
sits
yeah.
on top, and it's just
Beautiful. That's very
and
Christmassy almost.
it is. It's beautiful. I mean, all summer long I was drinking the classic whiskey sour, which doesn't
Oh,
have
right.
cinnamon. It's just regular simple syrup and lemon. It's kind of like a hard lemonade, but frothy. And this, oh gosh, I can't even think of anything better than this. It's so tasty. It's like apple cidery, lemony. It's so good.
Sounds great. Well, let's a couple more people that have been lurking. Dregnan is in there. Hey, Megan Fox Ryder's in the chat. We need to get her on. And then Susie Q. Oh, Susie Q. Dun, 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 dun. Very cool. Protestant, welcome. Yes, thank you. If you're Protestant, welcome. We're all Christians, so Wrestler Town. And then over here, who else we got? Otto, Tien Vanol.
Before you say that we're all
Tennessee Bowl.
Christians. You
Okay.
should ask your Protestant friend if that's how they view us.
Oh, I
We
know.
view them that way. But
Jacob
that's not the way they
Castro.
always
Okay,
view
all right.
us.
You calm down, young lady. Let me get my Porcelain Thunder, KT. Matt Self is here. Finn, good to see you, Finn. Finn's one of my Catholic friends. And Catherine K. And who else? Holly. Let's see. Pyramid 7, Tara, MG Law. MG Law is going to be, so he's going to be on in a little bit. So everything's going good. Yeah, a lot of people have been looking forward to this. Lily. So let's just first thing for the people that are here who are not Catholic, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are common misconceptions, because I grew up in, I would say, a Church of God fundamentalist family background, some of them, and Methodist. We had some Methodists too, but we have some mostly Protestant backgrounds. And I had an uncle who was really a holy roller. Long story, but he would always tell me that Catholics weren't Christians.
Yep, that's how I grew up. Yep.
And I remember I was always a little afraid of the Catholic Church because
Me
it was
too.
always intimidating. You go in there as a kid and there's this ceremony, it's all serious. And
I was told there were idols in there, and it scared the crap out of me. Like,
yeah.
There's idols? Like Baal?
Yeah, what is that? What is there's a guy on a cross? The whole thing is kind of creepy when you're a kid.
Right.
So anyways,
a dead guy on a cross and he's bleeding and stuff.
Yes,
I mean,
he died for you.
It's intense.
It's like, oh my God, don't die for me. So I will say that the first thing is let's knock a few of these low-hanging fruits off. Megan Fox, as a Catholic, have you ever prayed to a statue in church?
No, never. Not once.
Have you ever prayed to the Pope?
Not once.
Not once. I don't remember doing this either. I don't remember.
I even criticized the Pope.
Yes, so I do too. And so I guess we could. So what are some of the other ones?
But praying to saints. I've never prayed to saints,
right?
Either. Never. Not once.
When we pray to Jesus and God and divine on earth, and the Holy Trinity. Is that fair?
That's fair. And when we ask the saints to pray for us, that is 100% biblical. You will find it in the Bible that the saints in heaven carry the prayers of the saints to the prayers of the saints on earth to the throne of God. That's in the Bible.
Yes, we hear Will says, so you're a bad Catholic. No, we're not good Protestant versions of Catholics. We're Catholics. We're not
Catholics who don't we don't pray. We don't ask saints to do things for us other than pray.
But if they did, we wouldn't object.
We would not object.
Okay. Let's say I've got another one too, and this is a really good one. Holly, my favorite it's the love for Mary. Well, you pray to Mary. Well, wait a second now. Let's get Mary kind of. I will say, well, here's one of my, I'm going to make a declaration here for all of you people. When I got to the Catholic Church, I didn't really understand Mary. I didn't understand. And the Catholics do have a reverence in their, I'd say, in their worship for Mary. Until I really, and I guess it might have been Jordan Peterson, but it was, but listening to one of his lectures about the meaning of Mary, and that the story of Mary is the story of womanhood and femininity and motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is a wonderful. So now I can tell people have heard me talk. What is your perspective on Mary within the Catholic Church?
Okay, so this is interesting. I read a book by Scott Hahn. I think it was called Queen of Heaven.
And Scott Hahn, for anybody, he is a very popular
he used to be
lay member, used to be Protestant,
who's
now
a Protestant
Catholic.
Preacher. Used to be a Protestant preacher turned Catholic lay person.
Very good person. Anyway, so go continue.
And he's fascinating. And if you ever have questions about what is the role of Mary in the church and how does Mary figure into the Catholic faith, that is the book to read. Queen of Heaven. It's a beautiful story about how Scott himself discovered his love for Mary, and that it wasn't because he came from a similar background that we did, Steve. So very fundamentalist, very against Mary. One of the things I learned in that book, I mean, how can you be against Mary, the mother of Christ? Really, when you think about it, it's such a silly thing. But when I looked into, I'm reading this book and I come across this part in it that talks about the history of the Protestant religion from Luther onwards. And Calvin himself, John Calvin himself, the founder of the Calvinist movement, which is by all definitions Protestant as can be, and they do not have anything to do with Mary. John Calvin loved Mary. So the Protestant churches have gone way far away from where they started. Luther, who nailed the theses to the door, also loved Mary, also had a great reverence for Mary, and would never have agreed with this anti-Mary, declaring Mary to be some kind of demonic influence, which truly is what they compare her in Protestant circles, some Protestant circles, to the goddess of to any goddesses in cult religions or other religions, like the goddess of fertility, for instance, that's not it. It's just absolutely not it. And yes, the Hail Mary that everyone is always complaining about is literally the words of the angel Gabriel, who comes to visit Mary when she is being told she's going to carry the Christ. It is absolutely 100% from the Bible. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. That's Gabriel talking to Mary. And the part that some Protestants have a problem with is this part: Holy Mary, Mother of God. And I don't know for what reason. Are you saying Mary is not a holy person? The mother of Christ? That the Lord chose a woman who was not good and holy? That can't be. That's not possible. It's just not possible. So if you believe in Jesus, and you believe that Jesus is Christ, and you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then how on earth could the Son of God be carried by anyone other than a holy woman? And what does the word holy mean anyway? Does that mean, because I say Holy Mary, Mary is holy, does that mean that I believe Mary is God? No, that doesn't compute. It's not the same thing. You know who else was holy? Elijah, Elisha. There's all kinds of people in the Bible.
Grandy in the chat here over says that Mary is the new Eve. And that's a very insightful comment, because the way that it was interesting, because the way somebody explained this to me, and I think, again, it might have been Jordan Peterson, but I found it of great interest and thought. And that is, God made his covenant with Adam and Eve, his original covenant, which was a pair individual, and then made his covenant with a people, a tribe, the Jewish tribe, and then expanded his covenant to all of us. So, which was the church. And I have somebody else I want to bring on for the discussion. We have another person who's sitting backstage, and it's MG Law.
How's it going, Steve?
Good.
Hey, Megan, what's going on?
We're just talking. Did you get a shower that quick? Man, you are a quick shower.
Yeah, well, I had just taken a shower. On. Someone else is, I have to, because I'm still Taekwondo kicked my butt tonight. So,
hey, I recognize you from the chat, but I've never seen you, so it's good to meet you.
I think we've been on stream with Jeff before.
Oh, were we? I'm sorry, I'm an idiot.
It's the Friday streams, we don't always remember a lot of it. So.
The Friday streams, never mind. I'm not going to remember anything from those.
Yes.
So, we're kind of bouncing things around. I want to first get the low-hanging fruit, which is to debunk some of these Catholic things. Oh, here's the other one. I get this from my Protestant uncle, who was late Uncle Norman, who was a great guy. He loved Uncle Norman, but he also stated that it says right in the Bible, "You shall call no man father," and so when you call the priest father, you're committing a heresy. What say you, my Catholic friends?
Oh, well.
No, this is a nice family stream now.
Well, doesn't it also say "call no man teacher"? But yet we call many men and women teachers.
What do you call your father?
I call my father or dad. I mean, we do call other people father. So that can't possibly be what it means. And so you have to remember that Jesus talked in parables constantly.
Yes.
He talked in riddles. And there's a reason why one of the things I love about the Catholic faith is that they refer to our faith as a mystery. There are several mysteries, the mystery of faith, and it's not something that is easily explainable. This is why theologians spend their entire lives studying the Word, studying the Bible, studying different ways of looking at the different books. And it's very important, I think, to me to ask these questions to someone who has studied these things from many different perspectives, including the original, if it's Aramaic or ancient Greek or whatever it is, to see the translations of the words and what they meant. I just heard this argument the other day about the father-teacher thing, and I can't remember the exact answer to it, but it was brilliant. I'll see if I can find it.
Look at
well, I mean, he's representative of Jesus and God on earth, as part of the church. So he's kind of almost standing in the shoes there during Mass. So, I don't think it's a big deal. I kind of was listening to the Mary thing, and it's in part Gabriel's words, but it's also Elizabeth's words when she, John the Baptist's mother, her and Mary were very close, and she came in while Mary was pregnant and was, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, because John leapt in her womb when Mary was in Elizabeth's presence. And so, it's she was like, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, because even.
No, I'm sorry. It's the chat cracks me. I love the chat. And I'm sorry. I'm looking at Brandon over here, and he cracks me up. And he's such a good guy. I got to say, he's a real supporter of all of us over here on the interwebs. But thank you very much. I have never been so hard in my entire life. Don't be hard on yourself. Drink time. It's not that email Steve, but not to be read on stream. I get it. Considered a retainer. All right. Well, I'm asking you. I'm a little confused. You see, you're punching on your phone. I can see, and not a keyboard, because there's some errors here. Are you saying that you want me to drink on my Catholic stream? Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about Catholics drinking?
Catholics drink a lot.
Yeah, we drink it.
We drink a ton. We drink a shit ton.
We also
even swear. Church. We drink at church. There is no time when Catholics are not drinking.
We have a whole series called Theology Uncorked.
There are fundraisers
during the week.
I've heard about Catholics Bible studies meeting at bars. This is one of the best things about the Catholic faith, is that you will never be shamed for having an alcoholic drink.
Okay, well, with that, are you? You don't have to super chat. Are you Mr. Brandon Lesko? Are you insinuating that I should have a sidecar with you? You have earned it if that's what you want, but I'm just saying it's not required. Let's see. What some other ones? Oh, hard. He also might be referring to getting hard. And I have a question for you, Mr. Lesko Brando, because he has earned by supporting Brucey the One-Eyed Wonder Dog, which is going to be coming out in Thanksgiving, man. It is on target. I got the last 2 drafts of the last 2 illustrations. I am so close to having that thing off to getting it fully assembled. I'm very happy. But he gets a full set of hardback books. My first 4 or 5 books, actually, when you count on Brucey the One-Eyed Wonder Dog. But he's already got them. He's already going to get them. This is the thing. So my question is, maybe we could do a 5-book hardback auction. I'm just thinking, if he wants to donate his books, because you want another set of 5. That's my question. You already got the 5. I want to say. So okay. Anyway, so the question is.
I also wanted to point out that Jesus' first miracle was to turn water into wine. The best wine, not just any wine, not some crappy, disgusting wine, but the best wine. And yes, we used to drink in church until they took the cup away after COVID.
And the host was surprised, because normally you save the crappy wine for the end of the party when everyone's too drunk to know the difference. And you saved the best for last, which was just, they were shocked.
So when Jesus brings out the wine, it's the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's the maybe a hard comment was for MG Law. Your email is legal documents. Okay. Maybe. Well, we'll see. It's not. Why don't we make it like a matching thing? Because one of the things people lean on old Mr. Brandon too hard, and maybe we get a matching bunch of Rumble rants and super chats and book purchases. But let's see. I wanted to ask you, so we got some of the clearing of the low hanging fruit
Did
here,
you see
right?
Jeff's comment? Because this is great.
No, what did he
This
say?
is fantastic. League of Vices says, the first drink I ever had in my life was at the St. Thomas Aquinas Student Center. They were giving out free hot buttered rum for final study. I mean,
That's
isn't that
great. See,
a
Right.
lovely picture? Isn't that a
see
lovely
what
thought?
kind of, don't we have a great religion?
Yes, it's so warm and inviting and fun. We have this thing at our parish that we used to do, well, before COVID anyway. Hopefully it'll come back, where they would do a meat raffle. Catholics love their raffles and their fundraisers, and the meat raffle was so funny. There's a bar, you buy drinks. We would donate alcohol for this thing. Everybody would get together and donate cases of wine or whatever, and then the townspeople, the townies, would come, and they give out. It's like a big gambling thing. It's hysterical. They pull out their money, and you bet money on the meat that they're giving away, and people win roasts and eggs and bacon, and for like really $20 or whatever, you could get like a huge thing of meat. And people love it. And then people get progressively drunker throughout the evening. And it's just so much fun. It's fun people watching, and it's fun community. It's
Well,
great.
and I
People
think
love
that
it.
one of the things I really like is life is meant to be lived. And I mean, obviously we're not for alcoholism, but on the other hand,
No.
it's like there's one of the things I like is that life is here. It's a gift. And God, I think, wants you to live your life to the fullest. If you're going to make a sculpture, make it the most beautiful thing you can do. If you're going to make a painting, do the best you can possibly. If you're going to write an article, do the best you can do in all things. And we're always failing. We're always failing. But we're also forgiven because God knows we're imperfect. And I always think about that because, whatever I do is insufficient. However, grace is given, thank God. Like, I don't pray for a fair God, or a just God. I pray for a forgiving God, right? And that's why I love the story of Peter, because Peter, to me, I relate to Peter. He's like, you just got to stay up and pray.
Yeah.
He's going,
How hard is it?
how hard is it? Come on, even Peter, the great, the rock, he couldn't do it. Oh, here, look at this and see. Thank you. Oh, I think here you go, Mr. Brandon.
There we go. Awesome.
See there, isn't that nice? So, all right, let's. I want to move a little bit along this week. I think we've got that down. Now,
Wait, I've got sort of an answer from Catholic Answers about the teacher father thing. Do you want to hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
certainly.
Jesus is not forbidding us to call men fathers who actually are such, either literally or spiritually. He is warning people against inaccurately attributing fatherhood or a particular kind of degree of fatherhood to those who do not have it. As the apostolic example shows, some individuals genuinely do have a spiritual fatherhood, meaning that they can be referred to as spiritual fathers. What must not be done is to confuse their form of spiritual paternity with that of God. Ultimately, God is our supreme protector, provider, and instructor. Correspondingly, it's wrong to view any individual other than God as having these roles. And then they also talk about how the actual word teacher is also interchangeable with the word doctor. Nice looking drink, Steve.
It's awesome.
And then if so, the fundamentalists who say we shouldn't call anyone father should also never call anyone doctor, because it means the same thing. So of course they're just not getting that this is again another, it's a parable. It's speaking in a way to give you a point without being so literal. The Bible is not always literal. In fact, I'm not even sure that it's ever literal. There's so many mysteries, and that's why I love the Catholic faith.
He couldn't be literal. He had to speak in parables in order to get around the Pharisees.
Well, and not
because
just
they were so literal.
When God speaks to humanity, how exactly can he communicate with us in our limited little minds?
Mm-hmm.
This is a puzzle that I think, okay, God is so infinite, and how can he communicate with us except through parables and relation of human experiences? I mean, we think that we can understand God. Back to the mystery of faith. If we think that we can understand God, we are sadly deluded. This is just a little cranium with a little mass of tissue, and it is utterly incapable of understanding anything in the concept of the universe or infinity or ethics or morality and good and evil. We're very small and limited in our life and our consciousness. And I think that, so when I look at this is God coming to us and communicating to us. And what better way than through parable and analogy?
I agree with that totally.
Here's what's this one here? I have full faith. Thank you, Legal Vices, for the super chat. How do you like that? How do you like Mr. Legal Vices? I have full faith that it's on the shelf behind you. Is Lady Hawk a good representation of Catholicism through Mr. Broadway?
I have to think about that. I've seen Lady Hawk so many times.
Yeah.
How does that relate? I don't know.
Got a neat look at this.
I will have to look at it again. I don't know.
Well, one thing that I really like about the Catholic Church is that anywhere I go in the world, and you talked about the differences, but there's such similarities. The Mass is the same. If I go to a Polish Mass, we have up here, I get it. I understand what's going on. I understand the repetition and the pattern of the ritual. Same thing. I think if you went to a Catholic church anywhere in the world, you will relate to the Mass as it is being presented.
Well, you should. I mean, Catholic means universal. So
right.
It's a universal church. And so every Sunday, it's the same readings around the world.
I think people don't know that. My sister didn't know that. When I told her that, she was blown away. You know what else people don't understand? Is that Mass happens every day.
Oh, here's another Protestant criticism. You don't read the Bible
oh my God, we read the Bible several times throughout the year. So you read the entire Bible by the time you're done with your full year. And that's another thing that, and when they say, yes, you're not a Bible believing church, what do you think we're reading? And every single Mass, we're reading a reading from the Old Testament, a reading from the New Testament, and then the reading of Christ's words himself, the gospel. So there's never a time in Mass when we are not reading or singing the scripture. Mm-hmm. So the singing, this is the other thing that I really love about it, because I became a convert. Actually, it was the music, to tell you the truth. If I'm really going to go to the root of what it was the music. It was, I was in a praise band at the church we were going to. It was like a Calvinist sort of non-denominational church that was really more like a coffee club with entertainment on Sundays. And I was in the band, which I loved. I loved being in the band. I loved playing my guitar and singing. And we sang all these great Chris Tomlin songs all the time. But it really began to feel like a concert and an entertainment space instead of a church. And I kept asking myself and wondering, like, where is the holy space? Where is the sacred space in these places? There just aren't any. Everyone is so casual in their skinny jeans and their lattes in church.
We're going to have a lot of people here who are Protestants who are watching, and I just want to debunk some myths because this is part of it. And then when we talk about the Mass, coming from a Protestant background, we're talking about a church service. All right, so we have a church service, and we call it Holy Mass. Right now, Mass it's the same every time. There's an Old Testament reading, there's a New Testament reading, and there's a gospel reading. 1, 2, 3. And then there's a homily. So the priest gets up and explains, maybe talks, or can really be anything.
Don't forget the psalm. We sing the psalms.
Psalms, right? But there's music interspersed. If you go to the daily Mass, sometimes they don't do that.
Well, that's true. There's no singing at the daily Mass, but there's reading of it.
So then you have the blessing, and then you have the host. So we give out the communion every Mass. You go to Mass and they say the blessings on the host, and then you take the host, and then that's the service. So it's quite formalized and structured in that way.
It's basically two parts. You have the liturgy of the Word, which is your readings, your psalms, those, and then you have liturgy of the Eucharist, which was with communion and the gifts. So.
Yeah, so this is I'm kind of surprised that these criticisms are even out there, but I think but if you go in there and it's chanted or sung, or it feels a little dispassionate compared to like running around and holding snakes, right? But it is very formalized and ritualistic, but everything that's said has very specific meaning. It's very connected to the faith and the church, and that's what you get. So
I do want to understand
real quick here. We got Brandon bombing me, and I thank you, Brandon, for bombing me. Believe me, it's very
he's trying to get me to drink.
Well,
And I didn't bring a glass in here. I'd have to go get one. The kids aren't in bed
okay,
yet.
we'll
so
wait.
Okay.
All right. If legalizes maybe generally laws best. See there, see, you're a bad influence, but I love it. And Finn, thank you very much. He's getting entertained by you. See there, my Catholic friends. And Matt Self, Melanie Max started reading the Bible on one of her channels as requested from her subscribers. Bible time with Melanie, and she is up to Leviticus. Anyone who wants to listen, there you go. A little promo. Melanie Mack.
If you want to understand the litany of the Mass, one of the best ways to do it is to get a children's a litany book. So I bought my children. I thought I had it in my desk drawer here, but I have Mass books for my kids that are it's the order of the Mass told through the great works of art, because there are great works of art that actually depict every moment of the Mass, and it's an incredible little book. I wish I knew what it was called. I don't have it in front of me. But I would make these little Mass bags that have things in them for my children to do, because people always ask, how do children sit through Catholic Mass? Because we don't have preschool. We don't have children's church. We believe children should be in Mass with everybody else. So I bought these, and these are basically prayer cards. They have pictures of saints and of Christ on it, prayers on the back, and my children would be able to, sit through, and if they were bored, they could look at their prayer cards. They could look at their order of the Mass with their art books. And I found that to be incredibly helpful for them, because they can follow along through pictures and see what is happening and learn it really well, so that by the time that they are old enough to really grasp it and understand it, they know exactly what is happening and why.
Right.
We even had like little Lego sets that showed the altar and where everything where you could build it. You build the altar and you build where the priest goes and all the cups and the different things and like how to do it. There's all kinds of ways to teach your children. I had mine in Catholic homeschool for a while at one of the parishes here that was just wonderful, and they taught them all of that. I loved it.
Drink up, Megan. This is a great comment from Porcelain Thunder. Once in your life, you have to see High Mass at a cathedral basilica. I agree. And it's so wonderful to be part of that. When I feel like when I'm Catholic and I go to these beautiful places and hear these beautiful choirs and the pageantry and the beauty, it's like
it's another level.
How beautiful can we make what we're doing? How great can we make it? And I feel like this is man at its best. Some of these.
That's what I was missing when I was at these other churches that were so casual. And, Catholics don't drink coffee in church. In fact, you're not even supposed to have yanything in your stomach an hour before taking the host. And if you have eaten, you're supposed to decline the host, because you're not supposed to have eaten before you take it. There's a lot of rules, and people think, well, that's too stiff and it's too uptight. But really, for some of us who have been looking for holy spaces and sacred spaces, it's one of the last remaining sacred spaces that there is in this country. Personally, I feel that as a Christian, as a Western Christian, the only religion that makes sense to me is Catholicism. It's the only one that makes sense. And I've looked at a lot of them. I've been a part of a lot of them, and it's the only one that makes any sense.
And one of the things, again, coming at it from a Protestant perspective and coming into the church, I had, okay, this is what I believe, but I would say that my belief system was not very well developed. And I didn't really have a great passion for the faith. And, but yet as I learned, and the more I learned, the more humbled I become about how rudimentary my understanding of the faith is. And so even that's why Joe was putting me on the spot, because, I didn't feel like I was really qualified. And the more I learn and the study, the deeper and richer. There's thousands of years, literally, of brilliant minds who have puzzled on these questions. The problem of suffering, the meaning of the Trinity, the purpose of everything we do in Mass, have all been very deeply thought out and put down and debated and discussed, to the point that you could spend a lifetime looking into it and never even get close.
And never even scratch the surface. Yeah. That's the thing that's so fascinating about it. This is a religion, this is a faith that is steeped in history to such an extent. There are writings and letters in the Vatican right now of the followers of Paul himself. Do you understand this? Like when you go back and you look at what the fathers of the church, the fathers of the Catholic Church, the Christian faith, who they were. These are men who learned at the feet of St. Paul. And the letters exist. They are there.
Yes.
So there's no
with the Bible,
arguing with it. The Christian faith is the Catholic Church, and we accept all other Protestant Christian faiths as brothers, separated brothers in Christ. That's the
and
way
you can
we
attend
describe
Mass
it.
if you're Protestant. You can't take
You
communion,
can't take the
but
host,
you can attend Mass.
Yes.
and if you are Protestant, find out what you're protesting. Do the research, right?
Yeah, what are you protesting?
What are you protesting exactly? Because, and I understand that there's some barriers and, there's doctrinal differences, but I found that my doctrinal differences, you come at things with humility, on your knees. And my doctrinal difference, like, do I really know? Like I said, when I research any questions I might have, I find that, like, either the church is right or I'm not qualified to make that call, right?
Yeah.
You know what's funny?
Mm-hmm.
So I was raised apostolic. My family still is. My mom and my sisters. My one sister, it's who you guys know. I think Stephanie. She's been on my program lots. My lawyer sister. She was very when I first converted. She was very against it because that's how we had been raised. We had been raised that Catholics are not Christian and that there's a problem and it's demonic and all this other stuff. And we had a real problem, like trying to figure it out between the two of us. But I had many deep conversations with her about it. And within 2 years, she had put her daughter in a Catholic homeschool group because she had realized that I kept telling her, my doctrine is much closer to yours than the Calvinist or the evangelicals are. And that's the group she was in, was this evangelical group, which are truly not very conservative at all. And the Catholic faith and the more, fundamentalist faiths are actually quite a lot closer. And it's just interesting. She finally came around to that conclusion and she loves her new Catholic homeschool group. She's not converting or anything, but she realized and accepted that, yeah, we are way closer than we ever were to the Calvinists, than we ever are to evangelicals at all.
Sure. Well, and Christians generally have so much in common. Even, Joe and I, we talk, he's always shocked about how common the Jewish faith and the Christian faith is, and obviously there's a major doctrinal difference, but, the fact is that there's a lot of commonality.
The rituals are very similar.
Yeah.
The order of the Mass, the way that Mass is presented, the ark, our altar with where we call the ark, or where the host is. The Jewish religion has the same thing. They keep the scrolls there. It's like the exact same setup. They have a cantor. We have a cantor. They have certain, they read the Old Testament. We read the Old Testament. It's very similar. If you've ever been to a synagogue, I took a religion class in college, and we had to go to each one. We had to go to a synagogue, a Hindu temple, a mosque, and like experience all these different religions. And I was shocked at how similar the synagogue was. I was so thrilled by it. I felt at home there. It was so strange that I felt at home there. But of course, it makes sense because Jesus was a Jew.
Can I ask you both? Now, are you both cradle Catholics or are you converts?
Not me. I'm a convert.
I'm a cradle Catholic, and I still don't know a whole lot. My mom, on the other hand, she used to teach liturgy at a Catholic high school, so she was the bishop in town called her the Queen Bee of Liturgy. So
it's
she knows all this stuff. She could ask her the questions, and she knows it all. But
Grandee says RCIA Catholics love the faith, and sometimes more than cradle Catholics.
And my wife is a convert. She was a Baptist in California, and so it was a lot of the guitars and clapping hands, worship music. But she fell in love with the symbolism and the meanings and the tradition of the church.
So what about Megan? Did you
7 years ago, I left Chicago. I left Chicago and I left the church I was in, and I had been making a conversion quietly, without realizing it really. And the reason it happened, it's actually in my book. It's in this book, Shut Up, The Bizarre War That One Public Library Waged Against the First Amendment. This is when it started happening to me. And the reason is because this was a book about our investigation that we did into a public library in Chicago that was allowing men to watch pornography near children. And when I reached out to the churches in the area to help with this horrific thing that was happening at our beautiful suburban library, where they were allowing this evil, this disgusting thing to happen near children, I got no help from my church. My pastor looked me dead in the eye and said, "It is not our job to seek justice on earth." And I was like, "I'm sorry. Our Lord said, love mercy, but seek justice." That's insane. It
Well,
is your job.
And that is one of the things I love about the Catholic Church. And it's hard. I don't know.
The Catholics fought with me, Steve.
Right. Well, but
you know who showed up?
Is
the
it
Catholics.
True? Yes, I get it. But is it true that, and I'm making a generalization. It might just be a reflection of my faith rather than a generalization. But I find one of the things I love about the Catholic Church is that there's a unity between God and the earth. And there's not this separation. You know, like the Shakers I always think about the Dunkard Church or whatever, that's plain as can be, and everybody dresses down, and it's like this: the world is sinful, and we're going to bow our heads because everything in humanity is evil, and God is up there and he's good, and there's this separation between man and God. When I think that the idea behind Catholicism is more of a unification, that God wants you to accept him and wants you to be part of him. And through the different rituals and beliefs, that we can become as close as we can on earth. And that's why when you build the cathedral, you make it as beautiful as you can to uplift humanity.
It's to bring heaven to earth instead of waiting for heaven. The cathedral
Or
itself
to punish
is built
yourself and whip yourself.
Right. The cathedral itself is built in a way to draw your eyes to the heavens. So if you've ever been inside, and this is something you might not know, that picture that you used for your thumbnail, Steve, that rosette, the window, that's I believe from Notre Dame. There's a particular story about why these windows. I have a book about it. It's about the great cathedrals and what it means in Catholicism and how these cathedrals are built. For one, they are always built in the shape of a cross. There are two wings that go out to the side and one longer wing in the front, and the altar is always at the top. They're facing a specific direction. I don't remember which one now. But when you go inside a church and you're sitting inside the cathedral, the architecture is actually made so that your eyes rise to the ceiling. And if you've ever noticed, when you're in one of these places, you cannot help yourself. You can't. My church is like this, and in where I live in New York, and you just, my priest had stars painted on the ceiling and blue sky. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. He had it redone, and he did all the gilding in gold the way it was supposed to be. Somebody had come in and slapped white paint on everything. And when he came in, he totally redid the whole thing and painted the walls back red and the gilding gold, and the sky is blue. It's unbelievable. But you sit there like this. And it's okay if you sit there the entire time like this, because the whole point is to elevate your earthly experience. When you walk into the house of God, you are supposed to have one foot on earth and one foot in heaven. Your spirit is supposed to be elevated. This is something that the Protestant church has lost completely when they took everything off the walls and they got rid of all the gold and they got rid of all the candles and all the bells and all the smells and all the things that elevate the human spirit to a different place, a meditational zone. You know, there's something about Catholicism, and when they teach you how to pray, and when you learn, and people say, Protestants say, well, that's so rote. It's just memorizing words. No, it's not just memorizing words.
Well, it can be, and and let's be fair.
It can be, but if you're doing it,
I think there's a lot of Catholics who do that.
They go through the motions.
There's a validity there in that. We really, as good Catholics, we need to pay attention to what's being. I mean, MG Law, you're more of the cradle Catholic here. I mean, what is your?
You learn it through rote memorization. I mean, doing it every week. But as you get older, you learn the meanings behind a lot of these things. And if you're doing it properly, you're reflecting on that as you're reciting these prayers in Mass.
Well, so you know how rosaries, you're supposed to, you say the Hail Mary like 10 times per decade.
Yes.
Well, the thing that I think non-Catholics don't understand, they think we're just sitting there reciting that prayer over and over again with nothing else going on, like just nothing.
No, you're
But there's
thinking about things
actually
going on in your life.
you're supposed to be meditating on the life of Christ,
Yeah.
depending on what cycle you're in.
Which mystery?
So which mystery? So there could be the Annunciation, or it could be I'm trying to think, the baptism of Christ. So on each decade, you're supposed to be meditating on a certain moment in the life of Christ. And I cannot tell you, when you're doing it the way that it is meant to be done, you get to a point where heaven opens up in the middle of this meditation, and it's the most beautiful experience you'll ever have. That is how I got converted, was praying the rosary. That's it. I learned how to pray it. I remember thinking to myself, I think prayer beads are a good idea. And I had read something in history about how even Protestants had their own prayer beads, and so I made some for Protestant prayer beads. And I experimented with that. And then I started reading about the rosary. And then I realized, why aren't I praying a rosary? Because this is a very ancient and old thing, and it's very biblical. So I'm going to start praying it. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was over after that, because once you do it.
That's fascinating. I mean, how people, and it's a big tent faith. And there's not like, this is the way to the faith. There's, everybody's individual, and you have your own path to faith. And so it's like, we can share our stories, and I've shared my story in my book, and Megan just shared some of her faith and some of her stories. Some people are born into it, right? But we all have our own unique path, and the meaning. That's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to talk with everybody as sort of a group panel discussion, because we all have our unique paths into the faith, and it can mean different things to different people. So there is a unifying church, a universal church. But also, it's not like, okay, this is the way, and if you don't believe my way, then you're out. Yeah. Which is oftentimes what you see. There's like the exclusion.
No, definitely not. And I don't like that. I don't like that.
I don't either.
I don't like that philosophy. And I think that's really what turned me off from fundamentalism, from the church that I was born into, because they were convinced that their way was the only way. My grandmother was Catholic, and she had a rosary. And I remember it being very off limits to me as a child. Like my mother would tell me that these things were evil and they were bad. And she had her little prayer book and her little rosary. And my grandmother did not get to live to see me become a Catholic. And I know that she knows now, but the point is that I didn't get that experience. I didn't have that. And now I understand why she kept that rosary with her all the time. And now I get it. And it isn't that I want to tell people you must pray the rosary or you're doing it wrong. I want to tell people, try it to see if it does for you what it did for me. If it does for you the things it does for other people, just try it. It will increase your faith. It will not harm your faith. It's a prayer meditation. You know how there's so much information in the Bible about meditating on these things. Meditate on these things. Do this, do that. Yes. What do you think Jesus was doing for 40 days in the desert? What was he doing?
He was meditating.
He was not eating. He was fasting. What do you do when you fast? Well, you have to do something. You're meditating. This is something that the Protestant churches have lost completely. Meditation is central to our faith.
Okay, I got some questions here. Okay, first one, and this is on topic. Diamonds and Henna, one of my earliest and biggest supporters, says, how do you try it? Like, okay, Megan Fox, I've heard all you talking all this stuff, Rosary. How do I actually learn how to do this so that I can try it for myself? What would you say to the person?
I have an incredible app on my phone. It's called Laudate, Laudate. It's a fantastic app. It has every prayer in the church. It has every rosary you could possibly want to say, the regular rosary, and it has the different ones. There's different kinds, but you can just click on this app and it walks you right through it.
What if I'm not a techie? What if
you can go on YouTube?
You can go to YouTube for sure.
iTunes, anywhere you can just type in anywhere, pray a rosary, and you can be praying with monks in, somewhere.
And there probably is a Catholic bookstore in your town if you live in a decent sized city. Even a place like Mardel, which is same, I think, as similar company. Like I think it's the same company as I think Hobby Lobby is the same owns them or something.
Amazon. If you
But
go to
yeah,
Amazon, you can get my very first rosary that I bought, I felt like such a heretic. Oh God, I remember walking into that Catholic bookshop and just being like, I'm going to get struck by lightning. I'm going to buy this thing. And it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And it was a small rosary and it came with a book. It just came with a little booklet. And that booklet had every mystery in it. So the
Yeah.
joyful,
sorrowful,
yeah,
glorious,
sorrowful,
light. Yeah.
glorious, luminous mysteries. And each one, and it just walks you through how to do it. And that's the first rosary I ever prayed, was just reading through this book as I did it. And then eventually you memorize it, or you can listen to it. I like to listen to it. So the Laudate app actually has podcasts of the rosaries being read basically to you, so you can pray along with someone.
Well, MG Law, I know
I love
you've got your timing is a little shorter than, we're just hanging out. But could you
Sure.
explain, like, what is it? It's a broad question, but how does your faith impact you, and what does Catholicism? How did you find the faith for yourself as an adult?
It's hard. I mean, when you're faced with a lot of things going on, but even as an attorney, there are things that you feel about the compassion, the forgiveness. There's always something you can do to better yourself in your life that you can tie to Mass. And one thing that always gets me is if there's something going on troubling me in my life, some challenge, it almost never fails that when I go to Mass that next Sunday, that the readings and or the homily speaks to what's going on.
It's totally
And
true.
it is absolutely amazing.
I have
and
a,
that's
I have a
one of the big
suspicion.
things. It's crazy.
I have a suspicion that reconciliation, part of that, which is confession,
Yes.
is
My
part of
daughter's
the way
going to
that
do this year.
is part of the way that the priests get in touch with what's going on with the people within the church, and that a lot of times that they reflect back what's in the minds of the people that are coming to Mass, and they're using the reconciliation as a way to understand and reflect back. What do you think about that?
Well, they're supposed to be very forgetful. That's the whole point of they're not supposed to remember anything that you confess in that confessional.
No, but you can.
I'm sure
But
it's
like,
hard not
so
to
many, isn't
remember
it
or
so
reflect on it.
often that you go into Mass and you hear the homily and you're like, man, that relates exactly to what's going on in
And
my
that's what's
life.
crazy is it does, or one of the three readings will have some meaning to it that directly ties to what you're going through in your life. It is uncanny at times that be sitting there and I'm almost brought to tears thinking about, holy crap, I needed to come to Mass. This is why I came to Mass today.
Well, what do you think
Yeah.
about Wrestler Town here? It says, I resented learning the Apostles' Creed. Having to memorize it for confirmation did take away from its meaning for me. So what is your
I love the Apostles' Creed. That's
I
funny.
do too, and I do too, but I'm an adult. If you're a child and you're kind of forced.
I had to memorize it because I went to private Christian school. I went to a Dutch school, a Calvinist school,
Well,
and
what
we
do
had
we
to
do
memorize it.
about
But I don't remember being upset by it at all. But I guess
No,
I
but there
understand.
is a certain resentment. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
raised Catholic, and this is an MG Law question too, I
Oh,
guess.
my husband has this problem. He's a cradle Catholic, and he resents being forced to go to Mass, and he still doesn't like to go. So there is definitely
Give me just a second.
No problem.
there is
Yeah.
definitely a disadvantage. You don't want to, there's like a hard line to walk there with your kids. On one hand, you want them to be in Mass and you want them to go, but you don't want to force them to sit there to the point where they resent it and don't want to go as adults. That's a difficulty.
Right. And this is and I've got another question here. I got it written down, but we'll get to it. And this is it's a tough thing, is how do we pass on the faith to our children? And yet there is this, well, you got to learn the Apostles. The Apostles' Creed is something we say that's basically a concise statement of the faith that goes way back. I mean,
it's very
2,000
simplified.
years.
I mean, normally in Mass you're saying the Nicene Creed, you're saying the longer version, but basically it's the entire it's the Catholic faith condensed into short handful of paragraphs. It's everything. We believe in God the Father, the Son, Jesus Son. Jesus is his Son, the Holy Spirit.
He did.
then believe, in one Catholic universal church, forget it, one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. So it doesn't matter if you're baptized as a Baptist, Methodist, Episcopal, Catholic. If you join the church, you don't get baptized again. It's one baptism for your
And
forgiveness.
isn't
of
it
your
something that the Protestant churches use the same creed?
sins.
So I
Well, this
was
is
very
goes back to
surprised
yeah, it
when
goes
I got
back
to a
to
Catholic church and I realized, oh, I know this creed.
Mhm.
We're saying the same one. And so when they get to the part where it says, I confess one holy apostolic
One
Catholic
Holy Catholic and
church,
Apostolic Church.
that part is something to me.
interesting. Well, one of the what is it? Slidey Pie. Whoop, we lost.
Yeah.
Slidey Pie in over on Rumble says, "What are the rules to take communion during services?" And this is a good question for the priest
Yeah.
and also for RCIA and to go to mass, because you have to be Catholic in order to take communion or be
Yes.
in communion with the Catholic Church. And that's an interesting. We have an Eastern Orthodox rite that is just down the street from us that's very different, but it is in communion with the Catholic Church. And so basically you can go there and it counts.
Yeah.
And here, this brings me to the kind of an interesting little question, or one of the reasons I kind of wanted to do this stream too, and it's about Catholic evangelization, because we have priests and the priests are very well educated on the faith, right? I mean, extreme. And that's one thing I love, because whenever I have questions, I can interrogate the priest and they know their stuff, right? And then I have a deacon friend of mine who's married. He's my godfather. And he, Deacon Bruce, and he's like, well, I don't really feel comfortable coming on to your stream and talking about the faith, because am I really speaking for the faith, right? And then then it's us here. Then now that leaves us schlubs.
Exactly. So saying I could ask my mom any of these questions and she could just spit these things out. But that is one thing I think that Catholics have a hard time, evangelizing. It is very, very difficult. And some of it is, the environment, in this, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. So I was in the very small minority who was Catholic. So you didn't dare try to speak out and spread your faith amongst the Southern Baptists.
Right.
You didn't dare do that.
Well, also the fact that I think that as laity, we don't really feel like, are we really qualified? I mean,
Yeah.
there's humility that comes into it, and there's a respect and a reverence for the magisterium and the church as a whole.
Mhm.
And who am I to be speaking for the Catholics? And
Yeah.
and Joe has put me on the spot on his stream, right? Answer for the Catholics, right? And I'm like, well, I'm just a laity. I don't speak for the church, and neither do you. So isn't there, that might be a little bit of a barrier to our evangelization? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. As saying, I've been a Catholic my entire life, and there's so much that I don't know off the top of my head. Now, if I have time to really think about it, then I can come up with an answer that probably works. But being put on the spot, it's even after all these years, there are a lot of things that I just don't really know how to present that in a conversation.
Right, and this is it's an interesting. I guess we might have lost Megan for.
Yeah, she dropped out, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to.
You're going to leave me all alone, along with my wonderful chat, and my wonderful viewers. And if you got to duck out, it's okay.
Yeah, I got to get the kids to bed. And if you're still going when they're asleep, then I'll jump back on. I don't know how.
I had a person from another faith. Let's say that they're marginally Christian, more cult than Christian, which shall remain unnamed. But their church had them working so hard that they were ignoring their kids. And I'm like, the church would never do that.
Not at all.
The church would say, you go take care of your kids. So God bless. MG Law, where can people find you, and what do you hear? What can you promote?
MG Law on YouTube and Twitter. I just finished up going through a rewatch of the Bradley Young trial out of Illinois. He was just sentenced yesterday, I think. So it'll probably be tomorrow night. I'm going to watch the sentencing of that. And then I'm going to find another trial to to kind of rewatch and go through. I've been having a lot of fun watching Jeff and Megan and
I
Aussie
remember
do
you
their
now. You're always in your car.
pretty much.
He's a
That's
working.
why
On
I
the
didn't.
road going
That's why I
to
didn't
court.
recognize you. You're not in
Yeah.
your car. You're always in your car when I see you on Jeff's
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah. Most of the time when he does it during the day,
Yeah.
you know, his morning streams. Yeah.
And I'm always on in the morning, even on
Yeah.
the Fridays, because I can't.
Yeah.
I work on Friday night, so
Yeah.
I'm never there at night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
he's like one of our up and comer secret weapons. So I think that
yeah,
you've just got nothing but
about
positive people.
45, I think about 45 subscribers from 500 on YouTube. So
So
I
go
haven't done a lot
subscribe to
of
MG
streaming.
Law. And what's the channel again? Go
It's
subscribe.
just at the MG Law. I mean, it's just the same. If you search for MG Law, you'll get that avatar. Will be mine.
So look for that. That's what I always look for, is the avatar.
So,
all right, good to have. Thank you for coming on
you.
and talking a little Catholicism.
Yeah.
with us.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Megan.
And peace
have a
be
good
with
night.
you, my friend.
You too.
Good night.
We always say, and your spirit.
And your spirit.
Yeah.
And with
And
your
Finn
spirit.
here, he says, I don't know if you caught that, you were knocked off, but we're talking about some of the barriers to us Catholics talking about it. And that's that we do have this hierarchy. And like, that's one of the reasons I wanted to come and talk just amongst ourselves to like, okay, we aren't speaking for the church.
No.
You know, what I say isn't the church.
No.
Nor is even really a priest. Only the magisterium speaks for the church, which is the priests gathered, the basically the conclave of all the priests. The Pope doesn't really speak for the church. It's the magisterium.
Unless he's speaking ex cathedra, which only has happened once in the last 100 years. So
Right.
This
so
is the thing. That's another one that people think. They think every time the Pope opens his mouth,
he's infallible.
That he's infallible. The word of the Pope is not infallible ever unless he is speaking in what they call ex cathedra, which means as the word of God. And that doesn't happen very often at all. In fact, the last time it happened was like 100 years ago. So Pope Francis's ideas and opinions on things are just that, his ideas and opinions. And yes, we're supposed to respect the Pope as the head of the church because he is the one put there by God. I mean, God puts every person, we believe as Christians, he elevates every person to every position. So whether that's the president of the United States, which is why we must have some respect even for Joe Biden, because he is the ruler of this country and he's the president. He got there somehow. God elevates and takes down, and that's not our place. It's God's place, right? We can have our opinions about what we think about Pope Francis and some of his, and I do think on the whole, people, especially conservative people, have been extremely critical and too critical of Pope Francis. There are times when he says things that I agree are not good. But most of the time, there are misunderstandings that if you look at it closely as to what he's actually saying and what actually happened without the commentary from the peanut gallery, it's not that bad. It's like, okay, guys, like calm down. Nothing is changing. Like he has his opinions, but we do not believe that the Pope is infallible no matter what he says. That's crazy.
Well, and so this Jenna brings up the exact point that kind of we're talking around. And let's just talk about the Pope's place within the church. How the church is structured and organized as an organization is the question that is answered by the magisterium, the priesthood, the Pope. He's the Bishop of Rome. He is the leader of the church. That is, it's not a democracy. We don't vote to decide who is, what the word of the God is.
I'm sure we wish we did, because that's the way human beings are. We want our own say in things instead of putting our faith in God, that God will move the church in the direction that he wants to move it, that it will go in the way that it is supposed to go. We think we can fix it. We
and that's the humanity, it's the ego of self.
Right.
But this is the question. Jesus is the head of the church. Absolutely. That is the divine providence of the church. But the thing is that we say that Catholics like to cite to Peter as being the rock, and that upon this rock I will build my church. And Peter was the first pope. But when you talk about popery, we're talking about just simply how the church is organized. it's not a question of that the Pope is some like new Jesus coming into
No,
town.
there've been a lot of bad popes, really bad
Right.
ones. You know,
So this is just
Borgias.
humanity about how we organize things. Ultimately, the church is Jesus's church. It is God's Christian church, and this is what we expect. And I think that how the church is organized is a little bit of a distraction, because what is the organization by which the church should be organized? I mean, should we have a constitution, a republic? Should Ben Franklin be there
Right.
writing down the church? I mean,
And I actually think no, I think absolutely not. I think that the way the church is organized, there may be problems, and there's certainly, we can talk about scandal, and there's been all sorts of things, but you're going to have that with humanity. No matter what organization you're in, there's going to be scandal and corruption. But when you're talking about God's church, someone must be, it's biblical for a bishop to be the head of the church. It says so in the Bible. The organization is structured out what the apostles talk about it. So it was given to them, they pass it down, and this is the way we were told to do it. Does it always work? I guess
but
depending
we're
on your
humans and we're flawed.
right, but depending on your point of view, yes, I guess it does always work, because this is the way it is supposed to work. It's set up the way it is supposed to be set up. And will there be failures and corruption and scandal? Yes. Isn't there always failure and corruption and scandal? Because every person is a human being. The Pope is not God. The Pope is not Jesus. There is no perfect person. There's no perfect organization. We can only do what we can as members of this body, to hold people accountable to what we know is right, and to be loud and speak up when things are wrong, that things are the idea that priests abusing children didn't get turned into the police
Well,
is
you're
a
jumping ahead
scandal.
because
Is a
you're
scandal.
jumping ahead of my topic areas.
Sorry.
And just hold on a second. No, hold that thought for just a second. I want to thank the chat for being so great and talking, and they're having their own little conversation amongst themselves, and they're doing really good. I think we've got a lot of Catholics in the chat, and they're doing a really good job. So keep it up, chat, especially on Rumble over here. But okay, so I'm going to bring up this point, because whenever I come in and I start talking about my Catholicism, there's always somebody who's instigating, who says, oh, and they love to slander the church by saying, oh, all those priests molesting little kids. How do you explain that? So I know that you're good at battling this one back, so I'm going to toss.
Well, to be fair, the church did scandalize itself, and that is the church's fault. That is the bishop's fault. That is the fault of the bishops. Look, there's a reason, there's a saying, the road to hell is paved with the skulls of bishops. Do not put your faith in bishops. Do not put your faith in the hierarchy of an organization, of the hierarchy of a church. That is not who we put our faith in, or who our eyes should be on, which is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ would not have harmed those children, but we don't have Jesus Christ in charge of the hierarchy. We have bishops and popes, and there's nothing we can do about that, other than in our own parishes making sure that as lay people we enforce safety precautions for children, and we can do that. That's something we can do as lay people.
I'm a little perplexed, because at the church I went to, of course, I have a son and I'm watching out for him. I never really saw he was an altar server, but I never saw the opportunity by which these things would occur. And it's a little perplexing to me, going to my church, trying to visualize the opportunity.
Well, because nowadays we are aware, and we're more helicopter parents who've watched our children and watched over them, almost obsessively.
But now it's also a mistake just to say that this danger only lies with the priest.
Oh no, it doesn't.
In fact,
the public school has 50 times the number of predators.
Repeat that for the public, just in case.
This is from a congressional study from 1997, that the public school system was shown to have 50 times the number of sexual predators preying on children. Not only that, but the school systems did the exact same thing the church organization did. And instead of getting rid of the molester teachers, they moved them to other schools to prey on other children. This is a human problem. It is not just a church problem. Look at the Mormon church and the problems they are having now, and the huge child sex abuse scandals in the Boy Scouts that came out. And now we have this other one that's coming out, this other cult with the influencer, the Mormon influencer. That's going to be huge before it's over. It's not just her children who were abused. There are going to be many, many, many more. I've been paying attention to that Ruby Frankie case. So believe me, there is a reckoning coming for all of these organizations. Where there is power, where there is money, where there is opportunity, you're going to have corruption and scandal, because we are human, because that's what happens, because evil exists.
Right. And this is the thing, is that the secular world wants to bring down the church. And this is a weapon that we have given them to allow this attack. But understand that the media and the secular world has an agenda, and that is to destroy the church.
The church. They're totally
and
ignoring.
So
they're ignoring the
if
public
it was a
school
fair
problem.
and unbiased media,
Yeah,
you would hear the same sort of flames and rhetoric directed at public schools.
right. But they cover that up. You have to be an intrepid type of journalist who will go up against the machine in order to even bring those stories out. Like we heard about the rubber rooms eventually, finally, where they would take these molester teachers and they would take them out of the classroom, but they would still be paying them 100% of their salary just to sit in a room all day doing nothing. And this is how they...
And it's much more, but when this happens, it never gets generalized to the public schools. It's that bad.
Right? It's always like one bad teacher, instead of saying,
when in fact
this is a systemic problem.
It's
Whereas
much more
we
common
admit,
in the public schools.
we admit as Catholics, we admit and recognize a systemic problem. And we've taken so many steps to fix it. In our parish, of course, in Rochester, I happen to know this because I'm friends with people on the layperson panel that the bishop has. But in the Diocese of Rochester, the bishop here has been turning in child molesters since the 70s, since he's been installed as the bishop. Like, he turns them into the police. He has an entire board of people that includes my friend who's a lawyer and police officers and lay people who look at the files. The priests don't look at the files. The lay people do on the board. And then they decide what happens to that, when they call the police and when they do this, so that it's taken out of the hands of the church hierarchy. So it's not even in their hands to begin with. They don't need his permission in order to call the police. And that's the way it should be. That no one needs to ask the bishop whether or not you call the police on a molester.
And the thing is that this is the thing, every priest that I've interacted with has been amazing.
Yeah, me too.
It's been a blessing, and the knowledge and the dedication. I am such a fan of the Catholic priesthood. That is one of the primary reasons that I became a Catholic. And I recognize there's bad apples, but over here in Rumble chat.
Sorry, I just dropped
one
something.
sidecar, and I'm already so is that there's pedophiles everywhere. You can't blame more. Yes, evil exists everywhere, and humanity is corrupt, and there are fallen people, and these pedophiles and people that are, tempted by different things and by evil, will find their way into innumerable organizations, and that the human,
especially where there's opportunity. So
when there's opportunity.
The thing is that the church, there's lots of children, and many years ago, the children were unsupervised because people had total faith in religious leaders, and they never considered that these people would be preying on children. We have a different perspective now.
And I would say that I think our church, I don't know about yours, is very careful about.
You have to go through if you are in any volunteer position, and this includes the paid positions as well. So if you work for the church, if you're a priest, if you're a lay person who does any volunteering, you have to go through abuse training. You have to go through a specific background check. You got to go through the training, and you have to renew it every year. I haven't renewed mine, so now I can't even volunteer at school. I have to go renew it before I can go volunteer at school. These are precautions that are good. They should be in place. And this is what people can do as lay people to make sure that this is not going to repeat itself, that we don't make the church a place for predators to find easy prey. And that's all it was. The church was an easy place for a predator to find access to children. That access is gone now. There is no more access. Like you said,
but
my
don't
kids
let
were
your guard down. If you think that it's just priests, here's a good point that people need to hear, because the media has turned it into it's these priests are doing all this. These predators, and I do sex offenses, and I see it all the time. I do criminal law, and I see these pedophiles. They are all over. You got to be careful with your kids anywhere they are. You can't just say, well,
Boy Scout leaders, coaches, in sports, you've got anyone
Relatives.
anyone who's in a position of power and authority over children it could be a problem.
Can I also turn on to a different topic, and I think we've covered that one. And here's another source of great delight when I discovered it in the Catholic Church that I didn't even know existed. And if people are looking to like access the faith and understand the faith, it's called the Catechism. The Catechism of the
That's on Laudate, by the way. The entire Catechism is on Laudate, and you can search anything in it. It's a searchable catechism.
But what is the Catechism, my friend Megan?
The Catechism is the written explanation, I guess, how I would say it, of the faith. Right. And so if you have a question, it's in the Catechism. And the Catechism is only, again, this would be, the Catechism cannot be changed unless we have that ex cathedra scenario or the magisterium meets and confers and agrees. And so this is something, the Catechism does not get changed very often. This is it's not like a living document, as they call as
living,
they try to say,
breathing document,
as they try to say about the Constitution. This is it's a set in stone sort of thing. There, of course, can be changes at some point, but you have to go through a major process. But so the Catechism is the Catholic explanation for the faith. So
which is wonderful. And again, this is a good place to start if you're Protestant, because a lot of people say, well, I have this specific objection for the church. Well, read the Catechism, get an explanation of what the faith is. And what they do is they actually, within the Catechism, they will cite to where the authority for the particular statement is, whether it be biblical or church-based. There will be a statement and there will be a footnote that says, okay, so if you're a Protestant, you're reading through the Catechism, you may find that you agree with most of it. And this is why I'm saying, well, then why are you separated from the church? Because it's such a great statement.
Here, I shared it with you so you can show the audience what the online one looks like.
There's that. Yeah, that's what I've got. I've got multiple copies.
So this is searchable. So as you can see here, it's separated into different. There's a prologue. There's part 1, the profession of the faith. Part 2, the celebration of the Christian mystery. Part 3, life in Christ. Part 4, Christian prayer. Life in Christ probably has the most answers to the questions that you might have. But it's basically it's philosophy. It's Catholic philosophy and Christian philosophy.
Go through just the index. Just show the index about what's in this book, because this is available at the Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Okay.
It's online.
So the life of man to know and love God.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can zoom in. Let's see. Handing on the faith. Catechesis, the aim and intended readership of this catechism, the structure of this catechism, practical directions for using it, necessary adaptations. So then we go to man's capacity for God, and it's broken down into, this is really like a textbook to Christianity. The desire for God that comes from naturally being human, ways of coming to know God, the knowledge of God according to the church, how we can speak about God. I mean, there's nothing in here it doesn't answer, really. You will not find, there's nothing in here. Oh, you know what else helped me, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Was EWTN. I really loved listening to the different shows on EWTN, which is a Catholic network. One of them was Catholic Answers. And this is a great radio program that every week or whenever they're on, they answer questions that people write in or call in to ask what is this? And then they often reference the Catechism. I learned so much listening to EWTN, and I love radio, so that's really my format of listening and learning things. I really like talk radio.
And on YouTube, Bishop Barron.
Bishop Barron, yes.
It's phenomenal. I love Bishop Barron. Bishop Barron is he does the Word on Fire ministry, and he is a real priest, and he is basically the voice for the church in the United States. He is I forget what the chief propagandist or whatever I call him. I forget, but he's the bishop in charge of explaining the Catholic Church to Americans. And he is all over YouTube. He's been on with Dennis Prager. He's been on with Jordan Peterson. He's been all over. And I just love the way he speaks. His depth of knowledge is incredible. And, so it depends, all of these are ways to access access the church. And so, if you have questions, these are ways to enter into it, right?
Oh, look how detailed it is. I
It
mean,
is amazingly
pages and pages of just the index. Here you have questions about the hierarchy. Here it is, consecrated life. Here's the hierarchical constitution of the church.
lay faithful. There we are.
Yep, there we are. And the consecrated life. It also will talk about, the different roles that you have as the body of Christ, right? The church, what does it mean? What does it mean to be holy? What does it mean to be Catholic? Here's all the questions you might have about devotion to the Blessed Virgin.
And notice that these are all, like, I believe in the forgiveness of sins. I believe the resurrection of life. These are all what's repeated in the Apostles' Creed. So it goes through the Apostles' Creed line by line and explains it. And then here's all the sacraments. People ask about the sacraments, right?
Why we believe what we believe, why the sacraments are important, what the sacraments constitute. There's nothing in here that it doesn't answer. There literally is no question you could come up with that isn't covered in this catechism. It's kind of amazing. It's an amazing
I love
document.
the catechism, and I'm glad. Thank you for. So
and it's beautifully written. It's beautifully written. That's the other thing.
It's thoughtful and it's very detailed and engineered. Let me see. I have Bishop Barron. Catechism. I think we're getting close. Do anybody else have some questions in the chat? I mean, we're just lay people here talking about our faith, and I did want to share because people have a lot of questions. Oh, I did want to share the story. I have one fellow who's in our church who went through RCIA with me, and he was very much a Bible thumping Protestant. And he would ring the bells. They had musical. They do the bell thing, and evangelize. And he went around and he actually started 4 different Protestant churches. But he found that every Protestant church that he founded would eventually devolve into doctrinal disputes and differences.
Yep.
And so he had 4 Protestant churches fail out from under him. And he and his wife and kids, and this is what he did, is he started exploring like the Catholic Church because he had a discussion with a Catholic, and he started digging into the catechism. And what he found was, and kind of what I was speaking up when I said in the beginning of this stream, is that either the Catholic Church was right or he wasn't really in a position to argue that much. And so he subsumed his ego a little bit, and he became Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
He's an excellent. He went through RCIA, which is the rite of Catholic initiation or rite of Christian RCIA, rite of Christian initiation for adults. Went through that and found that, and he's a really staunch Catholic, right? And found that a lot of our doctrinal differences are really sometimes us projecting what we want on the church rather than what we need. Or that it doesn't matter. Like sometimes
what it is.
This obscure doctrinal matter, like what is it, purgatory? Well, I don't really have any clue. And there's certain things that it's like I take on faith that there's a church doctrine, but nobody's come back and reported from purgatory.
Right.
So ultimately, it's a matter of faith.
But isn't there also
and is my faith debunked if I don't buy in and say, yes, this is true and this is right and I believe beyond? I don't really know. But to me, it's not required in order for me to be Catholic. Does that make sense?
Yes, especially because I also think that, like children who like boundaries and who like rules and being that they think they don't like being told no or not being given an explanation, but they do need boundaries and they do need rules. And sometimes the answer is because I said so. And there is no other deeper explanation.
Isn't that also a human reaction in that we don't know? We don't know some of these things.
And it's good sometimes to practice just obedience because for the sake of obedience itself.
But doesn't that rub against Americans?
Oh, of course. But of course, we're not talking about our obedience to government. We're talking about obedience to God. So, and that should not rub against our sensibilities.
But it does, because I'm an individual. I'll believe what I want. We're so individualized that it does hurt our faith, I think, in America especially. Somebody was asking about Latin Mass. And I did go to a
Oh, I've
Latin
been to
Mass.
Latin Mass. It's intense.
It's different. It's
intense.
different. It's I went to a
It's hard to follow along with. You got to have the book, and then you got to know where you are. It's helpful to go with somebody who knows and who's done it before. But there's also a lovely letting go of not having to know where you are and just enjoying it for the energy that it brings and what it is, and to just, which is why people used to pray the Rosary during Mass, because they didn't understand every word. And yet it keeps you in that meditative state, right? You're meditating on the life of Christ. You're in Mass. That's what you're here for. And it's the universal language of the church, which is really beautiful that in anywhere the reason why Latin is so wonderful is that at a time, almost everyone understood it. So you would have, so many services going at the same time in this language that was the common language. Now, of course, it isn't that way, and people don't.
But it's
understand
also a
Latin.
legacy of the old church.
Yeah.
In that, like you were mentioning a little earlier, it's only a recent development that people were literate. For most of humanity was illiterate for most of history.
Right.
So the fact is that the Latin Mass was irrelevant because the people were not able to read. And this was a big Protestant complaint, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And the Book of Common Prayer and the Bible being translated, the King James Version became so popular in England, the seat of Protestantism, because the Latin Mass was impenetrable to most of the laity. But see, this is an example of where the church has responded, I think rightfully so, that whereas they have responded, like when people love to criticize the church on the Reformation, the Reformation was Martin Luther, the 99 Theses, and a lot of valid criticisms about indulgences and buying priesthoods and things like that. But yet there was also something called the Counter-Reformation, wherein the church, I think, responded very slowly, but very methodically and rightfully to the criticisms. They did away with the indulgences. They did away with these things. There was a response to the reaction. But
did you also know about the indulgences, that the original intent too? This is very interesting because in some places and in some times, there was no government. The church was the government. And so if someone stole from his neighbor or was caught burglarizing or breaking some commandment, the church had the authority to punish that person, punish them as in put them in a prison cell. And the idea of an indulgence was a repayment to society of that wrong that you did. And the church took ownership of that, of the behavior of the flock. Now, what were there abuses? Yeah, sure.
Well, and this is typical of humanity. We corrupt.
The original idea and purpose was a grace, a mercy on the person who was being punished. Instead of it being just a complete punishment, they were told, well, you may repay for your sin against your neighbor, this amount or this thing, this whatever, you work in a field for 2 years, and that is your indulgence that will buy your way out of. It's a repayment to society, the thing that you did that was wrong.
Right.
So there's a historical context that is completely lost in today's day and age, because we have a separate government and church. The government and the church, though, at one time was the same thing. Was the ruling authority of the land.
But
was
typical
the
of humanity, we corrupt things, we corrupt institutions, and what starts out with a noble purpose becomes corrupted and warped by politicians and people in humanity, right? Mm-hmm. And like the same thing with the whole this separation between science and faith. That is something that, again, the secular world, the media, and the institutions have pushed very hard, and
they've created it because they've created it.
They've created it.
It is certainly not the norm. Right? It's a newer, modern sort of thing, but previously,
well, everybody knows about Galileo.
Ancient history, we're talking about the men of science were also men of God. So,
right. Well, exactly.
And the most learned scholars,
but most people know
were
about
priests and monks. who were the ones who could read and write and were translating things and studying science and studying things in these huge libraries that no one else had access to but the monks and the priests.
Right. Well, and in fact, Galileo is one that everybody remembers, like, oh, Galileo and the stupid church was punishing him for his scientific beliefs, and that he was correct, and the church was. But that, if you really know the story of that, that was more of a story about egos between human beings. And Galileo died a loyal Catholic. So he was he never did. But he was also very ego driven, as was the priest who ultimately punished him. But they used this as an example of, once that, then science, church became devoid of science. Church rejected science, and it became faith without rationality, faith without science, and science is over here, and science is true and good and correct. And that was this schism. But that is a false narrative that's been pushed. And as a case in point, I always like to point, there's a Belgian priest, Catholic priest, who is the originator of the Big Bang Theory, the creation, the origin of the universe. He was a mathematician, an astronomer, and a Belgian Catholic priest. Before he used Edwin Hubble's observations and theorized this as the explaining creation. And the church has always been very pro-science and pro-freedom. And I think that the narrative that there's this division is not supported by most of history, and that some of these things can be here we go. Look,
well, we were mentioning Bishop Fulton Sheen, and I love what Porcelain Thunder has to say. So I thought I would pull up a picture of Sheen in the garb he's talking about. But Porcelain Thunder says Sheen was pimping in his bishop getup. We need to make walking sticks and capes a thing again. Who doesn't love a church that has outfits like this? I mean, look at this guy. No, really, if you've ever had a chance to listen to Bishop Sheen, though, on EWTN still plays Bishop Sheen. Fulton Sheen, unbelievable theology, unbelievable homilies, wonderful philosophy to listen to. But yeah, check out the cape. Let's make capes great again.
Okay, and I will share my thing. There's the Belgian priest, Georges.
There we go.
I can't pronounce this Belgian.
Georges Lemaitre. I don't know. How do you say that? He
was the first to theorize the recession of
Lemaitre. That's how it's said.
Okay.
Lemaitre.
Expanding universe, observationally confirmed soon after by Edwin Hubble. The Hubble law now is the Hubble-Lemaitre law.
Huh.
So he was and so this is the thing. So this is our anti-science church at work. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I really
it's total garbage that the church is anti-science. That's not true at all. And if you look through history and of the inventors and scientists, many mathematicians, many of them were Christian people. So that it's just silly. We allow people to talk smack, untrue smack about Christianity constantly, because
we don't know these things, and we're humble, and we don't want to challenge and so it's like, well, I know what I believe and it doesn't matter. But that's one of the purposes of this little stream, is to kind of share, do a little speaking about our faith, and maybe correct some.
I just thought of something.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of something that I wanted to say when you said speaking about our faith, because when I got kicked off, when I came back, you said we were talking about how we're reticent to really talk about our faith. It's not a proselytizing religion. Okay. And I wanted to make that point this is one of the things that I actually really like about Catholicism. This is something that speaks to me about it, because I grew up in a religion where you were required to hand out, tracts, and you were required to go knock on doors, and because you were told that your neighbors were going to hell, and the only way that you could save them is to bring them to your church and nobody else's church, just your church. You're the only one that can save these people. And it's really anxiety inducing. And as a child being brought up in that environment, There's just a lot of anxiety there with the Armageddon tales and the rapture stuff and all of this stuff where it's like just massive anxiety about who is saved and who isn't, and am I going to make it? And Catholicism is so interesting. They're much more like Jews. Jews don't want you. They don't want you. You have to go and you have to basically chase down a rabbi in order for them to even consider letting you convert. They'll slam the door in your face 3 times before you even get to have a conversation, because they only want people who are serious. And in Catholicism, it's very similar. There
Right.
is no outreach to the community for conversion.
We're failing in that, and I think we should be a little
but
more.
I think in a way that the outreach is there, but it isn't for conversion. The outreach that we do is feeding the poor, clothing the cold and the naked, feeding the hungry, and doing the things that Christ told us to do. We aren't going to people's doors and saying, if you don't come to church, you're going to hell and you're a bad person. We're out there in the community having free dinners. We're offering a place to be. We're offering coats for kids who are cold, and boots and hats, and doing scarf drives and knitting things and blankets and prison things for sending gifts to women in prison. Those are the sorts of ministries that we're out there doing, and that's what Christ told us to do. The idea, he didn't say every person, you go out and make disciples.
Exactly. And
he told
yes,
the apostles,
thank
you go out and make disciples. But what are the rest of us supposed to do? That doesn't mean that you have a specific calling, every single person, to go and convert people, because the truth
or
is,
to go and feed everybody, or go and clothe everybody, or
right. But there's a lot of different,
we do better together.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas that you can plug yourself into and do the thing that speaks to you, that does the most good to help people, right? You can help someone without ever mentioning a religion. You can help people and show God's love without ever even mentioning it, and not pressuring people to become something that you think they should become. You want them to be drawn in because they feel the love of Christ through you and through the church, and they want to be a part of that. That's how I became a Catholic. I had a Catholic woman come very close to me and support me and help me. And never once, not once, did this woman ever say to me, you should come to Mass with me. She did give me a medal. She did give me a prayer card of Padre Pio, and just tell me, I'm praying for you. This is my favorite saint. I wanted you to have this. These were the things that she did that spoke to me without ever saying to me, you need to come to Mass with me, or, you need to do this for your salvation, or for whatever it is. It was just her action alone of just being there. She would come to these meetings at the library, and she would sit there and pray the entire time, just sitting behind me praying. She never said a word. She would just pray. And she was there every single month. That's the type of thing that you can do that Catholics are really good at. They're really good at that. They're really good at just filling a need quietly and without any fanfare. They're just there. And that, to me, was the greatest witness that I have ever seen. And it really got me.
It's another rebuttal to criticisms as an individual, that we all fail as individuals. And it's like, well, God says you need to feed the poor. God says you need to do this. God says you need to do this. What are you doing? What are you doing? And no matter how many things you say, oh, well, I do that, and I do that, you're going to miss 2 or 3 or 4 or 100, sure. Right?
Sure.
Whereas our church that I am part of does all of those things. We have a food kitchen. We have a prison ministry. We have a thrift shop store, right? We have so many things that we do as together as a group. And that's one of the things I love in the Catholic Mass. It's said every time, is look not onto our sins, but on the faith of your church. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is that maybe I'm not going out and feeding 50 hungry people every day. Although I have a rule that anybody who asks for food, I always give them food. I think that's but 9 times out of 10, they don't want the food. They just want the money.
Right.
But if somebody really wants me to go buy them a burger, I'll buy them a burger. Right. But we have a church that provides that. We have people. We have certain things with people who are homeless. We have charities. We have a food kitchen and to feed the
People who
homeless.
pray for
There's
people
so
in the
many things that our
hospital who
church
are
does.
sick, who
There's
bring,
and also
yep.
at the worldwide church. One of the things we did a couple of years ago with Burkina Faso, which is a very poor African country, was having a drought and a famine, and so we donated our yearly income from our thrift store to buy food to send. It was survival food, basically, to a very poor area of the world that was having a famine. And we all packaged it up. We sent it off. It was a great charity. But what it was non-governmental. It was
Right.
parish
I
to
love
parish.
that. I
We
love
sent
that.
it direct.
I love the community in our church, the Catholic Church, does more of those types of outreach as a group, as a community. Like if you look in the bulletin, whenever you go to church, when you go to mass, there's always an opportunity. It's almost weekly that you can join some group, here or there, that is going to be in the basement packaging things for someone, and this is not, like you
There's a
said,
place for you everywhere.
there's a place for you
There's a
everywhere.
thrift shop, or you can work in the food store.
You
You
can
can work in the,
volunteer.
you can
Yeah.
speak. You can be a mass server. You can be an altar person. You can be
One of the most fun things I did with my kids, and this is what you had asked earlier, how do you get your kids involved in these in church? I think taking them to these events is just as important, if not more so even than mass, because these are the times when they find the community and the fun and the other kids and the socialization that they really want, that the Protestants are so good at with providing Sunday school. That's the big draw for parents going to Protestant
Sure.
churches, is that they have these big children's programs. Well, one of the most fun things that I did with my kids was take them to an event where we were putting together care packages of hand knitted items that the ladies of the church had knitted for children and adults who were cold, or who needed scarves and hats and gloves. And we all got together in an assembly line, and the basement was full of people, and there were snacks and there was coffee, and we were all packaging these things up and getting them ready to be delivered to the people who needed them. The kids will never forget that. They had the most fun looking through the items and making sure that, and also the Christmas tree. So every Christmas there's they have the ornaments on the tree, and you can pick one up, and they're gifts for needy people, and you can bring them to the church wrapped and put them under the tree, and the church hands them out. And it's wonderful that we don't rely on government programs that are so terrible at actually giving out any charity, and we can see it being done right there in our own parish, in our own neighborhoods, hosting free dinners. We would do monthly free dinners where the kids would go and volunteer to serve food, and anybody in the community could come and eat. Anybody. So church family or homeless people, it didn't matter. And people would just come in and eat. And there was no other agenda. It's just a free meal. It's just food, because we want to be there feeding the community. We want to be there.
Also what Christ commanded. So, and we do this, we do all of these things through the church. And that's what's saying, like all of my charity, I donate to the church. Not that I'm a great charitable guy, but because together I don't want to deal with the government. Like to me, my marital vows, the ones that matter are the ones that I said in church, not some legal paper. And the same thing with like, what matters is what you do for people, but that we do it together. We do it as a church. We do it as a greater group. Megan, you've got responsible as your family. You give what you can, you contribute, you make your place within the greater group. And that's why it's like, look on the faith of your church, not on our individual sins, because individually we all fail.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been wonderful. Megan Fox, tell everybody where they can find you and hear more of this wonderful. You're just a joy. Every time I'm on with you, it's just a slice of heaven. And
thank you.
You have a beautiful family and a great perspective on things. You're your own person. You're honest. You're straightforward. And we need more truth tellers in the world, and you're one of them. So tell everybody where we can hear more from you and what they should do.
Thank you. I'm at meganfox.locals.com. That's where you find all the notifications for whatever it is that I'm doing. I've been taking some time off from the journalism and the writing because I've had some medical problems with a pinched nerve. And so I got a new job and I wait tables now, and it's great. I love it. I'm having so much fun taking a break from the darkness in the world to just bring people food. And I love it. It's helping me heal. It's helping my neck. It's helping everything. I'm out of pain now. It's great. And I have a new series on locals called Tales from the Restaurant, where I talk about all the restaurant industry hilarity and the Karens that we run into in the place. But more importantly, how great it is and how wonderful these new people are that I'm our team that I'm working with. It's just so fun. And on my locals, I do laundry streams, I do homemaking things, cooking, cleaning. We watch documentaries together. We have a lot of fun together. And
yeah, it's like home ec class.
yeah, it is.
You got such a neat little community going, and
I do. I have a lot of. In fact, I'm going to be doing another cooking stream soon. My friend Eric Non-Idol is going to come and make fall chili with us. He's a chef, and he comes and he teaches me how to do things like break down a chicken or debone a chicken. It's fun. It's hilarious. We have so much fun. We laugh, and we're gonna make some chili soon. So if you're not a member of meganfox.locals.com, you can use promo code Maya MAYA, because I'm covering the Maya Kowalski trial right now, and we're using Maya's name as a promo code for a free month when you sign up monthly to see. Maybe you want to try it out. You just want to do a trial. That's fine. Come and have a trial month and see what you think about my little locals community, because I'm having a great time there. It's so much fun. And we're trying to be as positive as we can. You know, I'm doing way less politics and way less darkness and way more, focusing on beauty and light and love and family and the things that bring us together and not drive us apart.
Right on. And I want to thank my chat, especially Grandee and Slidey Pie and Wrestler Town and Lake Wanderer, all those great people over on Rumble. I love you guys, and you've been Dregden Strife, been very kind in promoting and talking. And same here on YouTube. We have Eliza. You've been nice, and Janice, and Finn is here. Of course, Brandon, Porcelain, Catherine, all these good people here over on my chats, and everybody who's watching, and people are catching on replay. You know, we'll do this again soon. I only broadcast when I have something to say, and something worthwhile to do here. And there's also inspiration. And like I got cut off. The last one I cut off because just wasn't feeling it. And I do this because there is something to be said for truth and promoting something you don't see. Like you were saying, let's not dwell on the negativity. There's always going to be that, but there's also some other things. Let your life be governed by your own view and positivity in God, and not some organization or media telling you what you need to be thinking.
Beauty and truth.
Beauty and truth. So anyway, God bless you all, and you guys have a good night. And let's just say, peace be with you, which is our
and with your spirit.
There you go. God bless.
Good night, everybody.